Hello and welcome to Family Tech, where you get to be the tech expert of your home. I am Sarah Kimmel, and like I said, this is Family Tech. So it is so exciting today. Even if you aren't very involved in politics, you can't deny that the decisions our lawmakers make affect us. And the American Moms is a fantastic Instagram account and blog that can help you get more involved in the issues that you care about and help you understand some of the issues you didn't even know you care about. So I'm so glad to be able to speak to Brittany today to help explain some of the laws surrounding technology and what you can do to get more involved. So, Brittany, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your platform you have with your sister, which sounds like so much fun. I love my sister, but we have totally different interests, so we can't do something like that together.
Yeah, we're lucky. We had the same major in college and similar career background, so this kind of worked for us to do this together. So our background is actually in journalism. And I think journalists get a really bad reputation these days for inserting too much bias and their own opinion into things. But that training really helped us to look at issues from different angles and definitely helped with understanding what real research looks like. So even though I don't use journalism a ton right now, it's provided me with a really good foundation for a lot of different things. Like my job in politics, for example. I worked in the public affairs office of the US Surgeon General and the US Secretary of Health, and that's kind of how I got my start in that field, and I just helped them craft messages. I've worked in the presidential speechwriting office at the White House and also doing constituent services for a member of Congress. So now my twin sister, again, who also has a background in politics, she worked for the US Senate. We have our American Moms account on Instagram, and we talk about all aspects of citizenship and politics, and we try and keep the drama out of it. We know people don't like that. And I also, random side note, just got my graduate degree in writing for children. So that's kind of the next
Oh, wow.
chapter in my life, is just reaching this goal of becoming a children's book author. So
Well,
that's me. And I've got
fun.
3 kids. The issues we're talking about today are super important to me, and I hope that they can become more important to all parents. So
Totally agree. Oh, well, that sounds like fun. You, what the topics of your children's books? Is it going to be political, or are you going to?
well, a little bit. So it's mostly nonfiction that I write. So I am kind of starting this series of bipartisan friendships to let people know that it's okay to be friends with people who don't think like you. So
Yeah.
that's really a big project I've been working on. So
Oh, that's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about it when that comes to fruition. So, uh, I'm sure you'll post about it on online. So,
I will.
yeah. So definitely follow them, the American Moms. It's the American Moms, right?
Yes.
On Instagram and check them out. Their website's great too. So let's get right into it because I know you've got some limited time today. So want to be respectful of that. Many states are passing laws around social media. If my state is one of them, I live in Utah. And so if your state is one of those, how do you recommend people find out more about these laws? Because they see the headlines like, oh, is this going to affect me? Like, how do you recommend they do that?
Yeah. So the bill text for all these laws, they're all available online on each respective state's legislature sites. And if you can't figure it out how to get there, I always just say start by Googling it.
Yeah.
Always look for a .gov site so that you know you're getting an accurate primary source. And the bills will include the representatives who sponsored them and co-sponsored them, and it kind of all breaks it down by sections. Now, the tricky thing is, if you aren't a lawyer, which most of us are not, sometimes the legal jargon in these bills can be a little bit hard to understand.
Yeah.
It's not always user friendly. So what I like to do is, after a bill is passed that I'm curious about, I will often go to the governor's website after a state law is passed, because they almost always have press releases and media advisories about it where they break things down in really easy to understand ways. And again, then you're getting the information right from the source. You're not getting people's opinion about it. They're just trying to insert the facts. And you can also even call your legislator's office, and they often have summaries of the bills as well. You can, again, Google it and select the news tab to see what articles have been published about it. And another tip, again, this is my journalism background kind of kicking in. If you want to know what critics are saying about a bill, type into your search bar critics of the bill say, and then type in the name of the bill. And that works for me almost every single time. And we always tell people to do this because we really encourage people to see both sides of something, even if they agree with it. And we always tell our followers that even if you agree with the policy 100%, or if you do agree with it 100%, then you aren't looking at it closely enough, because no bill is without its flaws. Even if it's your political party of choice passed it, look closely, because there's always a flaw in there. So that's just a random tip.
That's a really good tip. Yeah, so if you do disagree with it, say, "Okay, oh, I agree with it 100%," but maybe there's some things in there that you disagree with, which obviously will happen, apparently. So how do you get involved with, like, "Okay, hey, I disagree with this. This is my state. Like, what would I do next?"
Yeah, so every state amends laws a little bit differently. So the first step would be to contact your state legislator's office. That's always where you want to start. And sometimes you see like third party groups who are sending petitions out online, and in my experience those are rarely effective. So and then another tip is, don't call your congressman about state laws. So they have no state say in state laws. So remember who
Oh,
has
good to know.
jurisdiction over what. So state legislators are who you call for state laws, members of Congress are who you call for federal laws, and the mayors who you contact for city laws. And then I always say, don't just call and complain. If you don't like something, kind of try and pinpoint what it is that you don't like about it. Don't just say, oh, this senator I don't like introduced it, so it must be terrible. Like, figure out what it is that you don't like, and what it is, like, what would you change about it? Like, do some research, and then maybe come up with, like, okay, what would have been a better way to approach this? And that way, when you're calling them, you're not just spewing negativity and going off on a rant. Maybe you kind of have a solution in mind, and that is going to be a much more beneficial discussion on both parts if you kind of come prepared that way. And then be honest, ask them, like, how do I get this law changed? And again, it varies by state. Sometimes if it's a ballot measure, you can get it repealed or amended and back on the ballot with a certain number of signatures, and then you take it back to the voters. So sometimes there's a process, and sometimes you have, not sometimes, most of the time you have to be super patient to get something changed, because likely that bill didn't pass super fast either. Most of these have been in the works. Some of the ones we'll talk about a little bit later have been in the works for years. So it really does take a long time. And another thing you can do, if you can't get a hold of your legislator at his office, which a lot of them, unfortunately, there's not a big budget for them for staff. So they don't always answer their phone, and they're not very good at answering mail. But go to a community meeting and find them. They all be
Track them down, go
available.
stalking.
They should all be available to answer questions. Like, you are their constituents. You elected them. So you have every right to speak to them. But again, do it respectfully.
Sure.
No one wants someone yelling at them in a public space. So just offer them the same respect that you would want. So yeah, I mean, and sometimes their schedules are on their websites. Sometimes you can just call and ask them, like, when is your next public meeting? And they should be able to tell you.
Wow, that's great advice. And I would kind of echo on that. Like, getting involved in, like, the smaller, like, city things can really help you get involved in, like, the larger state and then, like, federal, because, like, you have more say, in a smaller area, right?
Yes, so many people only get excited about the big, like the federal, like congressmen or who are like the important and the president, but really, like, the city, the local level impacts you far more than the federal level ever will. So that's always a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. So, the current law that governs kids and social media companies, the COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, I've talked about it several times with regards to, like, the age of 13, because that's kind of where this, age of accountability comes from
Yeah.
for social media. But it's really old and outdated. Technology has changed so much since it came out. Are there any newer bills that are, in the works that are trying to update this law? And can you tell us kind of what that's about?
Yeah. So COPPA was passed in 1998. So that was like
Yeah.
the era of AOL, right? So we
Right.
are obviously way overdue for some updates, and lawmakers know that. And it's just kind of getting them to agree on the best way to overhaul this law. So May, two senators, one from Massachusetts and one from Louisiana, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, reintroduced, and I believe initially introduced a couple years ago. So again, these things take a lot of time. So they introduced, the way that they changed it is the Children and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act, which they also call COPPA 2.0. So
Oh,
their whole goal is just to update the online data privacy rules for the 21st century. rather than the AOL world, and just to protect kids and teens online. And they, both senators, readily acknowledge that we're facing a youth mental health crisis, and maybe not 100%, but in part fueled by technology. In addition to the Surgeon General's that we'll talk about later, the American Academy of Pediatrics has declared a national emergency for children's health. And so it's a serious issue. And so I think the whole issue here is not having senators and representatives agree that it's something that needs to be done. It's how do they do that? Both sides have different opinions on how to best rein in big tech and things like that. So I think it's just how to get it done. So this bill, COPPA 2.0, again, reintroduced, and you can even go on Congress's website if you're curious to see where the bill stands. Just go to congress.gov and you can type in COPPA, and you can see where it is. So far, let's see, I'm trying to think. COPPA 2.0 has been introduced, and also it recently, as of last week, amended. So they've already been going through, and I think in trying to get more support for it, they are going through and changing little things that people didn't like. So and I have a feeling before it passes, it will be amended many more times. And so the main difference here, again, is updating it for this new social media world that we live in. And also, like you said, the original COPPA, it really focused on the 13-year-olds. And I think people are questioning, like, why is 13 the adulthood of the internet? And so they're focusing on 13 to 16-year-olds, so trying to raise that age a little bit. And it just looks different because social media obviously completely different.
Yeah, I mean, back in 1998, it was a totally different landscape where,
we still had dial-up.
Right.
You had to log in and wait for that wonderful sound. I don't even know. They don't even know how different it is.
Yeah,
how different it was.
I know, it's so crazy. So, because and a lot of people are confused about this whole age of 13 thing. Why is it 13? And I always have to point it back, well, this is it. But I feel like tech companies have really kind of just tweaked this COPPA restriction to mean a lot of things that it didn't mean in the past because they didn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you get with any law that's old. Technology and the whole world is always moving on and growing and doing amazing things. So yeah, so it's definitely, they have a lot on their shoulders trying to get this figured out and to pass it. But that's not even the only bill that's on the table right now. So there's another one, and I'm sure we'll talk about the state laws a little bit later, but another bill by 2 Republican senators and 2 Democrat senators. They want to go even further than COPPA 2.0. And so their bill looks very similar to how a lot of the state laws are looking, where it's really getting parental consent for kids from ages 13 to 18 to be on those platforms. And these are senators who all of them have children. And as freshman senators, they're brand new at this, and they're already bringing this to the table, which I think is awesome. But they're bringing it up because they had so many people in their districts who, when they were running, came to them and said, please do something about this. This is a huge problem. Please make that a priority. And so that's one of the things that they did when they made it to the Senate. So it's awesome. I love to see bipartisanship.
Yeah. What's interesting to me, and I know we won't go into is it good or is it bad kind of issues with these social media bills, but what's interesting to me is a lot of people don't understand the repercussions for people who don't have children. So if I don't have children and I live in Utah, all of a sudden I'm also going to need to verify my age to have a social media account. And so if you're looking at different laws and stuff, don't just think about the repercussions for your kids. If you don't have kids, what does that mean for the population in general?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, not everybody has kids. And so I think a big chunk of the population is not even aware of this issue going on. I think there's even with teens who are not aware of these issues. We have someone at my kids' school who she started at the high schools several years ago, talking to parents about these issues and trying to keep kids safe online. And then she noticed it was happening at a younger age. So she moved down. Now she's doing the middle school kids. And then she realized it was happening at a younger age. And now she goes to the elementary schools and is talking to parents about how to keep their kids safe. So it's a whole thing. Kids or no kids. I mean, nobody wants kids to suffer and not be safe. So it's
Right.
just like, what is the best way to do this? And it's hard because, like you said, you can't say, oh, this law is bad or this law is good, because we honestly don't know yet.
Yeah.
Most of these laws don't even go into effect for another year at least. And
Mhm.
so it will take even longer time to see what happens. So it's just like, it's one big experiment. We don't know. We're just throwing things I think that people think might work and seeing what helps.
Yeah, throwing spaghetti on the wall. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
so you just touched on this. The Surgeon General recently released an advisory on social media and teen mental health. I read through the entire advisory on a live video when it came out, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the advisory in general and like what stuck out to you the most from it, especially somebody who's worked with the Surgeon General.
Yeah. So first of all, this wasn't the first time that he spoke up about this issue. He spoke up about it a year ago, and I think even a couple years ago. So the fact that he's doing it the second time and in a much bigger way sends such a clear message that he thinks this is such a serious issue and Americans need to pay attention. And so that's kind of what stuck out to me. And I love, there's this quote in there that says, our children and adolescents don't have the luxury of waiting years until we know the full extent of social media's impact. Their childhoods and development are happening now. And that was so powerful to me. Is he saying, okay, like, come on, everybody wake up. Like, we
Yeah,
don't have 4 years to get everything perfectly right, but we have to do something now. And I loved that he offered at the end of his advisory ways that we can do something now. So he
yeah,
offered different sections for what can lawmakers do, and there's a section specifically for that, and what can technology companies do. And he encouraged them, to be more transparent in their approaches and on collecting data. And then what can parents and caregivers do, because I think that's huge right there. A big chunk of how to help these issues are from parents and caregivers. And if they're not aware of this issue or what it is doing to their kids, then why are we having this conversation? Because
right.
we're the ones who have to give the consent on these new laws. And anyway, so you know that. And then there's even a section for what can children and teens do. And I love that because so much of the time it's us telling, it's everyone else making the decisions for teens, but they also have such a large role in
Yeah,
this and being accountable. And if their mental health is suffering, like there are things that they can do, and it offers them suggestions to create boundaries. Like keep a balance between your online and offline activities. Be cautious about what you share. Protect yourself. So there's a lot of suggestions there, and even what researchers can do.
mhm,
So I kind of loved um, that, and he even lists some really staggering facts. He says 95% of young people ages 13 to 17 are on social media and report using it almost constantly.
yeah.
And that is really what got me, almost constantly, because all these studies show that anyone who spends 3 hours or more a day are really at double the risk of these mental health issues. And so that they're doing it almost constantly, that's way more than 3 hours a day, right? Like that is just mind-boggling to me. And so that really like shows you the state of where we are right now.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my favorite parts, and I loved that he had that practical advice for, this is what you can do, and this is what you can do, and this is what you can do. I loved that whole section. But yeah, when you're talking about the 3 hours, I love that he showed that there was a study that even if they reduced it to like, maybe 30 minutes or an hour a day, that had a positive impact on their mental health just by reducing the time. He's not saying, get rid of it all and take it all away and things like that. He was mentioning, there are positive aspects of social media. We're just spending too much time on it, is what I really felt like he was saying there.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. And there was even a study that came out this past week, and it wasn't a social media study, but it was kind of correlated, showing that Americans are also, not just even teens, facing more depression and mental health issues because they're not getting outside enough.
Hmm.
And so I think that is like, I'm like, wow, like you can totally see the correlation. Like they're spending time inside doing all the tech things. Even just spending outside in the sunlight and getting fresh air can do wonders for you. I'm like, oh, imagine like
Yeah.
all
Weird.
the things that
Yeah.
people have been doing for ages, since the beginning of time. And now, but you wouldn't think, like, would you have ever thought growing up as a kid that that would be an issue?
Yeah.
People just not going outside anymore. Like, I wouldn't have ever thought that. So yeah, there's so many different correlations, so many different like domino effect of different things happening because of tech. And again, like I said, it's not all bad.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a study done in Psychology Today just a few weeks ago about these new
Psychology Today is the publication. A couple weeks ago is the time frame. No, I'm just
right.
kidding.
So that talked about like, let's see what teens think about these new laws. Do they want these new laws? And it was surprising to me. Over half of them said, yes, we want something done, but they didn't agree with the ban outright because, like you said, there are positive effects for them. There's the whole connecting with people. And
Yeah.
I think so often, like our generation and older generations think, well, we just used a phone. Like we just called people on a landline when we wanted to talk to them, or we just went and saw them in person. But these kids, you have to think their whole lives, this is what they know.
Mhm.
Like this is all they know. They don't know landlines. They don't
Right.
know like the way that we used to do it. And so it seems crazy to us that they can't just figure it out, but this is all they know.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I can see why they would be completely, you know, angered about having it completely taken away because this is what they know. So I think it's just finding a good balance and teaching them to find a balance. And like you said, it's not all negative. There are definitely some positive aspects of it too. And the Surgeon General was very clear. Like the first paragraph, I think, pointed that out. Like we know that there are benefits. So
Yeah.
it's just finding the balance.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, again, back to the like what parents can do. You seem about the same age as me. So, we're the Gen X people who were ingrained with like stranger danger and, don't get in the van with somebody selling puppies or candy. And I think we've really projected that on our kids and not let them go outside. So a lot of that kind of falls on us too, where we're like,
100%, yes.
I used to go down to the city pool in my bike and like go down to 7-Eleven and, ride all over. And
Yeah.
like us Generation X are like terrified of our kids doing that. So I
Yes.
just
No,
thought that's
I
interesting.
totally agree. Yeah, I used to walk half a mile up the street to the grocery store and I had to cross a busy road to get there. But we did it probably every day in the summertime.
Yeah.
And our parents knew it wasn't a big deal. And now sometimes I'm afraid to let my kids walk the 2 blocks to school because they have to cross a busy road. And oh
Yeah.
my God, something like it's terrifying. Yeah, we've kind of become a generation of helicopter parents. And my son, even this week, he's away at camp. And I just read a study, I read a lot of studies that said that it's okay. Kids actually need time away from their parents. Like it is good for them to figure out who they are away from their parents. And so I've remembered that and I was very proud of myself and I have not called him
Yeah.
every day this week. I'm like, he'll call if he needs me. I'm gonna leave him alone and let him grow up a little and do his thing. So
Yeah, and it's so hard. So, I recently had a similar experience. My daughter went on a humanitarian trip to Thailand, and
mm,
they took like as soon as they meet up with the group, they took all their phones, and so I had no contact with her for like 2.5 weeks. Maybe it was around closer to 3 weeks, and she was in Thailand. And I really debated going with her because a parent can go like there's two parents for every trip, and you
yeah.
do the same thing. But I'm like, I really felt it was important for her to be away, like, and not have that crutch of me. I mean, she's 17, but um, but I that's interesting that study is like they need some of that time, and I really was feeling that too. Like she needs to like go out on her own and figure some stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a lot of kids like in college who they've never really been away from home before. They've never really been away without their families, and they I don't remember what the stat was, but there's just an increased number of kids who come home their first semester, like if they go away, because
Yeah.
it's too hard for them. So I think it's good for kids to get those little doses of being independent, and not even just good, like it's necessary. Like they need that absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go encourage my son after we're done here to like ride his bike down to the Maverick and we'll be all right. Um, so I going back to these like social media things, like even adults can have issues discussing politics civilly online. I see it all the time on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever. Why do you think that is? Like, where I'm just like, I feel like I can say anything I want because it's Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, being online sadly gives us this false sense of invisibility. Like, it's almost like we see this as an online world and not a real world, like it's a game where
Right.
real, like, rules don't apply for real life. And so there's definitely a disconnect, because we don't, I think, also see the immediate consequences of what we say. And sometimes not even, like, sometimes we never see the consequence of what we say. Um, but we are never actually invisible. And consequences can actually be severe for what we say and our behavior online. And that's why we started kind of like a digital citizenship aspect to what we do, because we are in this digital world and it matters more than ever. What you can say online can affect people's emotions, their mental states, their behavior. You can even have like physical aspects on people, like they don't sleep well, they feel like sick because of what happened online. And we always try and tell teens too, like it can affect jobs. What you say can affect jobs. It can affect college admissions. Um, Businesses and academia don't see the online world as an alternate reality. Like it is real world, and we need to see it that way too. We need to be just to wake up and be smart about what we say and do online. And if we wouldn't do it or say it in person, we shouldn't do it or say it online. I think something to actually today, Sarah, today I had an experience this morning. I think I was just looking at a couple of different news sites on Instagram, and there was a story about homelessness in Portland, and I had just been there, so I kind of commented on my experience. Um, and someone responded to me, "Do the world a favor and never comment again." And I was like, "Oh
Wow.
gosh!" And it wasn't. It was like an innocent comment. It like wasn't even anything political at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm being like, "What? What? Like, where did that come from?" So I reported their comment on Instagram, but I was also proud of myself. I did not engage.
Nice.
I walked away. I did not comment back, even though that's like your first natural
Right.
instinct, right? Is you want to tell them something awful or tell them you feel sorry for them, but that's like their gut reaction to how to respond to somebody. But it also reminded me that, you know what, like you don't have to comment on everything that you have an opinion about. Like,
Right.
why did I feel the need to comment on that news site? It had thousands of comments. I didn't need to. Like, just move along. Like, opinions don't equal facts,
Right.
and everyone's opinions won't be the same as yours. And you kind of have to learn to be okay with that. And I think people are always like, well, how do we even practice that? And I think just being around people who think differently than you is a huge part of that. Like, don't live in an echo chamber. Talk to people who think differently. Differences don't have to equal hate. And I think somehow the last few years, that's kind of what's become. If I don't agree with you, oh, I hate you. So I must say mean things to you. I must tell you how wrong you are. Like, no, just walk away.
Yeah.
We don't have to always have those knee jerk reactions where we say something hurtful or awful, even if we don't ever know who the person is on the other end. It's like, just walk away.
Yeah, I get so many comments on my YouTube videos, because I talk a lot about how to set up parental controls for different apps and different, platforms, and the kids that comment on my YouTube videos, about how terrible of a mother I am, how my kids are gonna put me in a nursing home and everything like that. I mean, it's daily. I've been thinking about doing a video of my kids, like, reading these comments because we have a good laugh about them. But the same thing, like, I could respond to the comments, like, I could delete the comments, but I just kinda leave them there, and it just shows who they are, and, people who need the content, like, who need to set up parental controls or whatever, can see that and be like, "Oh, this is why I really need to set this up because."
Exactly. Sometimes if you have like loyal followers, like they'll jump in and save you anyway. Like I don't even need to say anything.
Yeah,
Someone else will be like, "Hey, like what the heck?"
yeah,
And I think it's also important to teach kids like how do we end cyberbullying? Like it's probably never going to end. It's never going to end in real life either.
no,
Sadly, I'm like, but what can we do? Like, who can stop poor online behavior? I always tell my kids, is it teachers? Is it parents? Is it the government? No, it's you. It's up to each of us. Like we
yeah.
are the only ones who can stop it by stopping the behavior in ourselves, and we have to do better for us, for our kids, and they're watching. They soak it all up.
Yeah, and I think it's important for them to see that reaction where I'm like, yeah, I don't need to engage. I can move on, and kind of go about my business, because then they, hopefully echo that behavior and not perpetrate it. But the other thing would be to help them understand that I can't control what this person is doing online.
Mm,
So, why even have, like, the energy to do that?
right. Yeah. You're never you're never going to control anybody else online, and even you're never going to convince somebody else to think like you online. Why we just we just have to say what we want to say. We just have to try and persuade this person. It's not going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
maybe in a face-to-face interaction, you can make a little bit of ground there, but online, it's just not going to happen. Like,
Your
it's not. So I don't know why we just persist in that way of thinking. But
your Facebook comment totally changed my mind, said no one ever.
right,
I don't
no, never. I know exactly. Need to make a meme about that. Spread it
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, that's a good one. So you touched on this really quickly, and I wanna dig a little bit deeper, if you've got some time. You talked about the echo chamber, and so social media, because of the algorithms, we can sometimes find ourselves in this echo chamber of ideas that we already agree with. So what would your recommendation be to see kind of both sides? Because like the TikTok algorithm, that thing is good. It will show me everything that I totally agree with and want to see. But you know, so I can get stuck in this echo chamber of all of the same ideas. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, so I always tell people, don't just follow everyone that you agree with. Follow a lot of different a left-leaning news source, a right-leaning news source. Like, I think I always laugh because I'm like, I think Instagram is so confused about what I want to see. Like, I follow the O'Reillys, I follow the Bushes, like, I follow so many different
It's
groups.
like, I
I follow the
don't
New
know.
York Times, I follow the Wall Street Journal. Like, you need to get a lot of different opinions in your world, because there's so much damage is being done by only hearing one side. It's like two different Americas. We live in alternate realities based on the media that we consume, and
Mhm.
it's not doing anyone any favors. And you have, again, just two, not even two, sometimes four or five different realities based on who you follow. And
Mhm.
I think you have to be really careful about that. I think we need to all consume a wide variety of news sources, and we need to learn that even if it has bias, it's okay. It doesn't mean it's incorrect just because it has bias or has a certain bias that you don't agree with. Um, Again, I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal every day, because I want to see all those different. I love seeing the different headlines and what different sides prioritize. Um, and if you read these different sources often, you can weed through the bias just fine. Like, it is not a big deal. Like, okay, well, the New York Times, they want me to think a certain way, and Fox News also wants me to think a certain way. So you take everything with a grain of salt, and I think once you read a lot of different sources, you can come to your own conclusions about an issue. And also, I was having this discussion with someone yesterday about this. We have elevated so many non-experts or people who just have strong opinions because of social media. Like, people who never would have had millions of people, at their feet listening to soaking up every word, because they have like no background in anything or anything that they're talking about. And we pay more attention to them than we do like actual people who've done research and spent years of their life on certain topics. And I think that's a shame too. And I think it's okay to even question the experts sometimes. Someone got mad at me yesterday because they said I was glorifying experts too much. And I know that even experts have their own opinions, and can. That's the great thing about technology and science, is that it's always evolving. And so something that was true last year, maybe they've come up with a new way this year. So things are always changing, but I think we have to be so careful about who we follow. Um, we live in a world of Kardashians and 24-hour news cycles, and like, who are you actually listening to and paying attention to, and are they worth your time? I always think, like, if they're making money off of you somehow, they're only telling you what you want to hear. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And that's how they make their money. That's how a lot of people are making their living now, like making a living off of followers on social media. Who would have thought? But so many people, it's how can I make money off my followers? How can I appeal to their emotions? So really think about who you follow. Follow, again, a wide variety of sources. Make Instagram confused about them, like, mix it up. And I think, yeah, there you go. There's my rant.
No, I love it. And I do love what you said about experts. That is one of my like pet peeves is like tech experts who have no background in technology. And I see it all the time. I come from IT. So I've been an IT manager for over 20 years. And so I've been in, my career for 20 years dealing with technology. And so, I feel like I can claim that I'm a tech expert. But when I see somebody who, just starts claiming they're a tech expert and have no background, that really drives me crazy. So I love what you said there about like kind of look into their credentials of like what makes them like or their opinion a little more valid from their background.
Yes. Yeah. Totally agree with you there. Like last year or 2 years ago, I don't even remember what the issue was. It was some big issue in the news. There was a beauty consultant who had like 200,000 followers on Instagram who was sharing a congressional call script that she'd made up. And someone who has worked in a congressional office, I'm like, no, you shouldn't be saying any of those things. Like, they won't even listen to you if you say things like that. Like, they won't, like, it was just completely ineffective.
Yeah.
And she was a beauty expert, so she had no knowledge, but people liked her and they liked her opinion.
Yeah.
So it like got shared millions of times, like this completely ineffective congressional call script. Anyway, that's another rant entirely. But like, yes, be careful. Like, is who you're following, opinions are different than fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all like to have our opinions validated, and I get that. But just be careful who you're following and why. And again, if they're making money off of you, just pay attention.
Yeah. And I love what you said about like making the Instagram algorithm confused. I mean, my algorithm is not confused at the fact that I love dogs because I get fed just all the dog content in the world. But if I am following, I have specific views. And so I know kind of the platforms and the people that have those views. How would I go about like finding that other side? Like that, I think that would be difficult for somebody to like, okay, well, I don't know really what I'm even searching for to get that other perspective.
That's a good question. Well, I think it's easy with the news. So there's a great resource called All Sides. I think it's allsides.com. And they have a whole media bias chart. So they have
that's cool.
Left, like far left, left leaning, center, right leaning, right. And you can go and there's like 50 different sources on there. And you can kind of just choose one from all the categories and start there. And if you decide like, oh, well, this is like way too much for me, then go to the left leaning or the right leaning instead of the far. Just little doses. And nobody's saying if you read it, you have to agree with it.
Yeah.
I think that's not the point. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm a traitor to my political party. I read this.
I'm a traitor.
Learn other viewpoints, and that it's okay for everyone not to think the same thing. I think that's the whole goal there. And that will do all of us so many favors.
So many. So it's allsides.com. Was that?
Allsides.com. Look that up right now to make sure. All Sides.
Because that sounds like a great resource. I'm excited.
Yeah, they're on Instagram too as All Sides. I can even send you the link. That's not good. Google real fast.
Yeah, and when we figure it out, I'll go ahead and put that in the description of the video. But
yeah, it's All Sides. Allsides.com.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So allsides.com. Definitely check that resource out. That's a great nugget.
Instagram too. What I love about their Instagram site is they will often do a news story and do side-by-side comparisons of the ways different media have handled it. And that's always really fun to see too.
I love that. Because like, so I'm, again, I have a tech background. I'm super analytical. Like, my friends and my family call me a robot because, I don't have a lot of emotions. I'm just like really analytical. And so whenever somebody like brings me like a news story, I'm always skeptical. I'm like, okay, well, I need to research like both sides of this story. But that sounds like my favorite resource ever. I'm so
You would
excited.
love that then. So go follow them. I'll tag you in an Instagram post up there so you know where they are. But yeah,
Okay.
they're really great.
That sounds awesome. So back to quickly about like the cyberbullying that we were talking about before we got sidetracked with the echo chamber. But is there something that we can do aside from just like not engaging to kind of help the broader issue on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like you said, we can't control other people. So I think we need to focus on what we can control ourselves
Yeah.
and how we engage with people. And like I said, we don't have to comment on every single post that we don't agree with. Like we don't have to. We don't have to comment on someone we don't like. Like we just don't have to do that. And I don't know where we got this idea that we ever did. And I think
They need to hear my opinion.
I know, your opinion is valuable, but like 500 other people who have your exact same opinion probably already commented. So
Yeah.
they don't need you. um, and you always get people who are like, well, and then they'll give you some like 1 in a million exceptions to things. Like,
Right.
okay, you know what the exceptions are. Don't argue about the exceptions. Like, but like sometimes we just miss the spirit of people's posts because we're so focused on the 1 in a million exception. But I think we need also to teach our kids to look out for each other. Like if they know something is happening, I think there's just so like, oh well, I'll get in trouble, or someone will get in trouble if I talk about this. But it's reporting things, and
Yeah.
I think sometimes staying silent leads to a lot of regret. And so I
Mhm.
think just teaching our kids to speak up about behavior that they see online that isn't okay, that they know isn't okay. That, if they're questioning anything, just talk to an adult, talk to someone they trust. Um, just always be aware. I mean, we live in a that's the great thing about social media is it connects us all. And so we just need to embrace that humanity in all of us and just be really look out for people.
Yeah. I love what you said there. And you mentioned it too when you were talking about that comment that you got. But don't be afraid of the report button. Like all of these
Yeah.
platforms have a way to report somebody who is being a bully. So don't be afraid of.
Yeah. And I don't know how quickly things are responded to
Sure.
that way. I know sometimes if I've reported something, I've seen the comment gone within a couple of minutes, and sometimes it's never been gone. So I
Mhm.
don't know, but it's a good place to start, right? It's a good practice to get into. You see something wrong, that's the first thing you can do. The
Yeah.
second thing you can do is even go further. You can block that person. You don't
Right.
have to ever engage with someone who's being hateful that way. Like just block them.
Yeah. And you don't even have to be like friends to block them. Like you can block somebody and just not see their content anymore.
Right, and I mean, that's harder to do in person,
Yeah.
but online it works great.
Works
So,
great.
and if the majority of
Love
teens are spending, all their time there, then that works.
Yeah. Well, so thank you so much, Brittany. Is there any other things that we missed that you wanted to touch on with all this government and social media and how we can improve our situation?
I think it's just gonna require patience. Smartphones and this whole digital world we live in, it's like one big experiment, and it's all new to everyone. I think we just need to be patient with ourselves, with others, and with all of these lawmakers as they're trying to make positive changes. We just need to be patient and give people grace, because this is new for everyone. It's not like it's just new for kids or new. It's new for adults too. So I think just the more we can do to be patient with each other and to realize things take time, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop advocating for laws and changes that we believe in. We should always be able to speak up. And I have so many people who are like, oh, that doesn't work, or, like that's not enough. Well, and I always tell them, like, run for office.
Yeah.
The lawmakers in right now at one point had decided to run for office as well. So it seems like a big scary thing, but it was big and scary to them too, and they're doing it.
Right.
So there you go.
I love that. And yeah, it giving them grace, like you were saying earlier, like it takes a long time for a bill to become a law. Like I keep imagining that video that I'm sure you watched, like with the, how a bill becomes a law, little cartoon guy.
And that's the thing, it's supposed to take a long time, right? Like,
Yeah.
if bills were passed instantaneous, can you even imagine, like, what would pass? Like, it's supposed to be a back and forth and compromising, like, it's designed to be that way. So we should want it to be difficult to pass these laws because otherwise, who knows what laws we would have. So it's
Right.
supposed to be, just keep in mind, it's designed this way for a reason.
It's the long game, not the instant. We live in such a world of instant gratification that it's
I know it, I know. That's the problem.
like, oh my gosh, I've been standing in this line for 5 minutes. Like, why is it
I
taking so
life is
long?
so hard, I know.
Yeah, giving us a little patience might, be to our benefit for sure.
Exactly.
Well, thank you again so much, Brittany. Really had a great time talking to you. Again, the American Moms on Instagram, on their website. And you've got some great resources on your website. Is there any other places you guys are sharing?
We just joined Threads, but we've
Oh,
only
nice.
posted maybe twice on there. So Instagram is really the main place. The website has a lot of fun. We do a lot of like historical, presidential, and state recipes, and a lot of more things for kids on our website,
Nice.
theamericanmoms.com. But we're mainly on Instagram, so come find us on there.
Okay, you can check out Brittany and her twin sister and have fun with that. Thanks again. What?
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, we'll have a good one, and we will see you guys next week.